certainly didn't help me politically to be the champion of cannabis freedom. But I believe in freedom.
Somebody's mom some 19-year-old boy who died on fentanyl would have liked to have drugs legal and their son to go into a store and actually get clean product and educated on what not to mix it with. I'm sure they would say, yes, that would be a better...
That is exactly right. We are a nation of immigrants, and immigration is one of the biggest problems with people who think that they're going to have open borders to everybody. You can't have open borders. No money could be used in the federal budget that would be used to counter or to attack someone for the medical use of marijuana. My life would have been destroyed. I'd have been destroyed. Instead, I was able to go on, and I became a speechwriter and a special assistant to the President of the United States. These are things I believe in, but I realize that there's no just easy answer.
What do you think Trump will do in terms of cannabis policy for America? Yo, what's up, ICBC family? Welcome to Where the World Meets Cannabis. This is our 4th edition, and we are in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and very excited to introduce and interview my next guest on this podcast here is the one and only, the illustrious Dana Rohrabacher. Thank you for being here, man.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here because we're talking about freedom. And when you're talking about freedom, you can have all the energy and get all that stirred up. And so it's always great to be here with you.
It's amazing that you're here. I find it so auspicious, and that you and your lovely wife Rhonda came in and to Slovenia, our little fiefdom here in Central Europe. We're really lucky to have you. A lot of people might not know. I know a lot of people, for some, you don't need an introduction. For those who don't know who Dana Rohrabacher is, he is a 30-year United States congressman. He served from Orange County, California. From
Southern California, but Orange County most of the time.
Southern California, but Orange County most of the time. That was your direct constituency. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, let's talk about this, Dana. Could you explain to the people, you're a Republican, okay? Mm-hmm. And we'll get into what you did for cannabis reform in a little bit. Could you explain your brand of Republicanism? Because it's not neoconservative, is it?
No, I don't think it's neoconservative. I believe that what I represent is a blend of libertarian and conservative patriotism. I am a patriot about the United States of America, but I believe I'm a patriot about the fundamental values of limited government and individual freedom. That's what motivates me, but I've managed to activate them in a pattern that will promote I believe, more freedom for more people, which then higher standard of living for most people, and also can bring peace to the world. And I do believe that that's the results I'm looking for, but it's based on an ideology of limited government, personal freedom.
And so that would be a libertarianism of sorts. You say it's a blend of libertarianism and conservatisve
and patriotism.
See,
libertarians tend to be just they're fighting for the ideology, and
right.
I fought for the ideology, but I also combined that with a deep love for the United States of America and for what our founding fathers and people wanted it to be, the shining light of liberty for the people of the world.
That's so interesting, because when you say that, I always think about like libertarians like the Koch brothers. There's two types of libertarians in my opinion, because I certainly resonate towards libertarianism myself, and I don't know if I never saw this in a textbook, but I thought, well, there's national libertarian under the auspices of nationalism, mm-hmm. but then there would be the ultimate idealistic libertarian that would be a globalist, right? Mm-hmm. That would mean open borders and, well, however free trade goes with anybody on the planet, that would be like a global form of libertarianism, which I don't believe in, right? I believe in the nation state, the rise of the Renaissance, right. The rise of the middle class, the land breakup, and now we have the end of the rule of kings and the nation state. and and globalism is not that solution. Could you talk a little bit about globalism versus
because
libertarianism?
I've met a lot of libertarian globalists, and they believe that you have to apply one set of rules for the whole world.
Right.
And I understand that, because I would like to set one set of rules for the whole country, for the United States of America.
Right.
And that is
for that nation state.
For the people who live there. And but no, I'm not a globalist, and however, I do believe that we should be trying to promote freedom in other countries as well.
Right.
And we just so we don't feel that they feel compelled to make everybody exactly like us. And we are a nation of immigrants, and immigration is one of the biggest problems with people who think that they're going to have open borders to everybody. You can't have open borders to everybody. It's going to cause, first of all, the enemies of freedom will take advantage of that to undermine our ability to have a democratic government here at home, and which they're doing. We have millions of people who came across the border, and we don't even know who they are, but a lot of them were military age, et cetera. Well, a libertarian, when I was, and I know the libertarians because I considered myself one for a long time, and I still consider myself one, but I'm a libertarian patriot.
Right. I love the qualification. But you're saying that the certain global libertarians believe that, like, NAFTA would be a perfect example for a libertarian piece of libertarian legislation that would, for a global libertarian, which I'm not. I think that makes no sense at all, because I think actually just culturally, I think the earth is better with a mosaic of cultures and not a monoculture of globalism. For even not to mention all the other reasons you mentioned why globalism isn't good, but monoculturing is not. And I agree with you. I think open borders is ridiculous. I think there's nobody that takes more immigrants than America. And on average, we take 300,000 legal immigrants or something like that every year.
Well, the trouble is people think that when you go through the details as you just did, and as I think I did before that, people think that we are in some way lack the aggressive and commitment to liberty and justice that I do hold, and you do hold that. That's one of the reasons why cannabis, for example, it certainly didn't help me politically to be the champion of cannabis freedom, but I believe in freedom, and I believe in liberty and justice for the American people. And
so this is your brand of you're Republican. Of course, there's only two real parties in America: Republicans and Democrats. And you're a Republican, and I think a lot of Europeans that will see this are surprised, and I even think a lot of Americans are too. We're a little more hip to it, but Europeans are really not hip to this idea that you're a Republican, therefore, you're being a republic, is in the old school term, not a political term of Republican, being a republic or republicanism, is just kind of the argument between how much power does the executive branch have or not in terms of federalism or anti-federalism.
Right.
And so the real definition of being a Republican is not being, let's say, the moral majority, the Reagan Republican, or the base that was the more religious. Fanatical religious base, right? It's not the neoconservative base, the new Rovian pivot, right? For the book, it's more of a Ron Paul would typify more what being a conservative is, because it doesn't mean you're not a liberal person, because to me you're one of the most liberal people that I know.
Oh, don't tell them I'm a liberal, please.
You believe in individual freedom and right. You believe that a man or a woman in their home, you don't care if someone's gay, or if someone uses a drug, or if it's a victimless. If it's a victimless thing, you believe in your more common law. I think no victimless crimes.
That's right.
And I think that's a really big surprise for folks, especially in Europe, that their entire conservative parties, most of them. Now you see little branches coming up that do understand the concept of, but otherwise they're conservative and they believe in social conservatism.
I have a long history with Ronald Reagan, for example, and people, so many people just look at him as he's some big right winger and everything. I think Ronald Reagan's basic impact was a very libertarian impact on our country, and also I think that when you're trying to determine policy of your government, it can't be just forgetting threats that are foreign threats that are coming in by foreign governments into your country and doing something. So I have not, I'm not an isolationist, but I do believe we should be working with other peoples to help them protect their own freedom, of course.
Right. So you're not an interventionist in the classical sense that we're going to have this huge, drawn-out 10-year war. You're like, oh, if we want to go kill Osama bin Laden in the Pashtun area between Pakistan and Afghanistan, we'll go send a special ops in there and we don't have to have a 20-year war, for example.
Yes. Well, that's because that's one of the things I did.
Well, I know you did. You fought with the Mujahideen in the 80s?
Yes.
I mean, you've actually told me a few stories about that in the past. It sounds, and you did.
I believe that anybody who's fighting against communism around the world is fighting against tyranny and injustice, and they are being, and the value of what they're creating in the world that is being used to undercut our freedom and our liberty and our security here in the United States and in other democratic countries. So you got to be practical about, these are things I believe in, but I realize that there's no just easy answer.
Yeah.
And you're going to try to work it out, and you don't want to overload too much freedom if it means in the end an enemy of the United States is going to destroy or eliminate. For example, I remember when Ollie North was making sure that the communists didn't take over Central America.
Yeah.
And I was very proud of that. And I still am proud of that. If we wouldn't have done that, can you imagine what the world would be like today had we let the Russians, through Castro, pump all that military equipment down there and take over all these Latin American governments? What would have, and the United States wouldn't have been able to stand anywhere in the world at that point.
No, it's important. Reductivism and self-righteousness can be dangerous, right? But you want to have a more, I think when you're more youthful, when you're younger, you have a more idealistic view of things. And as you get some wisdom, you know that these situations they exist, they're important, but in terms of having a solution for them, that's nuanced and it's never black and white. Dana, I don't think a lot of people know that you are, I believe there's no other congressman in the world that has done as much for cannabis as you have. No other politician, I would hasten to say. So let's talk about really quickly what was going on when medical marijuana started coming in the States. We had George Bush and the Bush administration banging down doors. Then Obama came, and a few of us were naive enough to think that it would stop under him, and it actually didn't. In seemingly Obama's first 4 years, it increased. Now, you did something, you championed something called the Rohrabacher-Farr, the Rohrabacher-Blumenauer Amendment, and it changed things up in a way that I never thought was possible. I remember when it happened and when it passed and then when it was implemented and when everything then quieted down and it worked, right? And the feds weren't coming in with machine guns to medical marijuana states to bust dispensaries and to take all their shit and to ruin lives and so on. Could you explain to us how the Rohrabacher, how you made what you did
first
to
of all,
make that happen?
Rohrabacher was a step forward. And the step forward to me is the federal government shouldn't be telling people what to consume if they are voluntarily consuming it, if they're an adult.
And especially if a state has decided.
Right. That's step number two. Step number one is you just have to realize that this is a fundamental right for people to consume what they want to consume. And that's that. They're individuals. Now, I will have to say that protecting children is okay, and making sure that that you're not being given drugs with ill intent, meaning somebody's given you a drug involved in a cookie, and it hasn't told you about the drug in the cookie.
Right.
Okay. Of course, we're against
Dana,
those.
I got something to tell you. No, I'm just kidding.
But there is no excuse whatsoever for telling somebody that they can't do with their own body what they want, or what they want to consume, or what they want to do, and that's their business. And to the degree you expand upon that, you have lessened first of all, you've wasted the time of the United States government when it should be paying attention to things that it needs to pay attention to, like international security.
And quickly, a quick digression that's I think is quite apropos is when Nixon hired the Schaefer Commission, a conservative commission, to ask should weed be legal or not. This commission of all conservatives said no, or should it be illegal? They said no, it shouldn't, because that's not the best way to conserve for
That's right.
society.
Well, it's been it's going
to cost. It's going to waste.
It's taken a long time to get to the point where my amendment actually passed.
Mm-hmm.
And what my amendment did, it just said that no money could be used in the federal budget that would be used to counter or to attack someone for the medical use of marijuana. So thus, at least we left it up to the states. Say if a state has said, as an issue, that there's a medical use for the marijuana in that state, the federal government couldn't come in and prosecute over and above what the state had already voted for. And that...
so it said that also. So I thought was under the impression that it only defunded law enforcement to not go bust heads.
Well, yeah, you could not have the federal government go and bust heads in the states where it is legal.
Right. But there was also a prosecutorial element to that, too, where the feds...
Well, the federal government could not use that money, any funds
for
in
any
the budget
funds,
at all.
And that includes prosecution.
Everything, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Sure, of course.
I never thought of that.
Well, I'll never forget that when I first passed it, I got a call from some guy. He says, "Dana, we got to thank you very much for this." And he says, and this guy's son had been arrested and by the federal government. He'd been arrested in a parking lot of a federal building for smoking marijuana in a federal building. But this guy was under a doctor's prescription, okay, for using marijuana.
But he went into federal space and therefore...
Yeah. And so anyway, he says, and when we went to court, the federal prosecutors demanded on taking him to court, but then we gave them a copy. Our defense lawyer gave him a copy of my bill.
And so you ain't going to get paid if you want to do this.
And the judge said, "Wait a minute, if this isn't the covered business, what does it cover if it doesn't cover this?" And the guy, and I want to thank you. My son is a good human being. He just needed that marijuana at that point, and anyway. It was I said, I won. I can't believe it.
So they throw it out, basically?
Yeah, the judge threw it out. He says, "Here it is."
Oh my God!
And he read my amendment to the jury and to the prosecutors and that was it.
Look, Dana, you had to get this passed. You had to work. You had to go across the aisle to get this passed.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that you don't really see on too many issues ever, especially today. It seems things are even more partisan. How was it that a Republican, even albeit a champion of freedom, psychopath champion of freedom Republican, was the one? You would think it would have been one would think.
Well, I remember there was the guy from I forget what he was from he was a Chicano from another state, and his name will come to me eventually. And I remember he came up to me and said, "What about this?" And I said, "No, it's good. It's for It's for limiting government and making sure your people don't get put in jail and singled out because they're smoking marijuana. This is ridiculous. Anyone had voted for me, and that made a major difference.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but how did you work across the aisle? Because I know I actually did a fundraiser for you and Earl Blumenauer maybe 10 years ago almost at the Jerry Garcia Suite at the Hyatt in San Francisco. And Joe Garofoli from the San Francisco Chronicle came and covered it because it was the first time, and it got a lot of press. It was the first time that that they knew of that anyone had done a fundraiser for a Democrat and a Republican at the very same time, right? Concurrently in the Jerry Garcia Suite in San Francisco. So, do you think cannabis is just conducive to working across the aisle, or was this something you had done with many things up to that point?
Well, I just I don't worry about what's happening across the aisle or on my side of the aisle. Frankly, I have a set of principles that will guide my decision making, and that's what causes that. They don't come down to me and say, you can't do this because the party is voting a different way, or you won't get your chairmanship if you don't support us in this. So I wouldn't give in on points like that. So I never had to face it. I guess people understood that I wasn't the type of guy who's going to
compromise your
or trade this for that.
Well, you have to trade a little bit for that in politics, but right? I mean, it's just.
Well, you do. You do. For example, I had to agree that to get the Rohrabacher Farr Amendment passed, I had to make sure that we are.
You had to vote for some neoconservative shit?
Well, I ended up voting against the bill that passed.
That they said you needed to vote for.
Well, I needed the bill that actually passed Rohrabacher Farr and made it into law was a budget for the year.
Oh, you voted against the budget bill
because the budget was hundreds of billions of dollars, and
knowing it would pass, though.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, sure, that's right. Knowing that it would pass, I went ahead and voted no. But
I remember that now. I remember that.
It was hard to explain to people, but look.
Right.
I thought that adding $1 trillion more debt to people's long-term economic impact on the American people.
Yeah, that's even bigger issue almost.
Yeah,
going broke and ruining our country.
Sure.
A country with debt is.
So I had to make that decision, and of course about cannabis, everybody knew that I was really big on the cannabis issue. So. But it's not just cannabis, by the way. Cannabis happens to be the one that's easy enough for people to understand.
Right.
Because there's so many people who are smoking marijuana out there or utilizing it.
Right.
That people know about that. Okay, but there's all kinds of other drugs that I don't believe should be illegal either. If people have a right to consume what they want to consume. Now, they've got to be, people are selling stuff. If they're selling something to someone and it's sold under false pretenses, that's something else again.
That's what prohibition causes. It causes it to go in the wrong hands.
Exactly.
And it's an absolute failed policy.
That is exactly correct.
And all drugs should be legal. You should be able to go to your pharmacy, 18 and older, and get any drug you want, and they should tell you exactly how it's going to affect you and exactly what you shouldn't mix it with. And if you ask somebody's mom some 19-year-old boy who died on fentanyl, if they would like to have drugs legal and their son to go into a store and actually get a clean product and educated on what not to mix it with.
Precisely right.
I'm sure they would say yes. That would be a better.
That is exactly right.
Solution.
And so my treatment of the drug issue and of marijuana issue in particular has always been just based on that principle.
Well, that's interesting because there's the freedom principle, right, of just individual liberty, and then there's this is actually the best, safest, most sensible policy for society in terms of drug use, because prohibition doesn't work. So when everyone says, oh, but what about this, what about that? What about it? Drugs are already there. You
Yeah.
can get them. They're in the wrong hands. They're creating a black market economy. It's not safe. The kids are getting pushed shit from this angle. And, you ask kids in high school in America, is it easier to get weed or alcohol? And a lot of them will tell you it's a lot easier to get weed than it is alcohol. But alcohol is legal. Because remember in high school, I remember you'd have to get someone older than you to go buy it for you, or get your friend who kind of had a mustache starting to grow finally, to him go try it or whatever.
Yeah,
it was difficult to get alcohol.
Yeah, I find it absolutely ridiculous that people are trying to control what other people consume. And yes, they shouldn't be, especially you shouldn't be selling it to minors, but if someone is 18 years old or whatever it is, you want to make it, I think 18 years old is a good idea.
If you can die for your country.
And there would be fewer people who are underage be taking drugs that, as you say, are not pure and are hurting themselves.
Right.
And what's the real problem there? The real threat is that we're hurting a whole thousands of young people are being damaged because they don't have the protection of what if this was legal.
Yeah, and isn't that it's counterintuitive to so many people.
Yeah.
But I think to the logical brain and someone who's been around and can understand how this society works.
Let me note this. This is very important in that I, of course, spent time in my life, a couple years in my life, where I smoked marijuana. I have not done that for 20-something years now. I just realized it wasn't good for me. I didn't think it was good for me, and I still don't think it was good for me, so I don't do it. But I remember I was a depressed person at one point, and I had spent some time in Vietnam, and I was disillusioned with things, and I started smoking marijuana. And but I ended up saying, I remember I got up one morning, there were a whole bunch of people crashed out on the you can imagine what kind of wild life I lived back in those days. And I said, wow, man, what a bummer. Wow, man, what a bummer. I remember saying that to myself, and I think that was a
What, you're sounding like a real Cali stoner, you mean?
Yeah, and so I said, wait a minute, that's not the language I use. That's not me. And I stopped using marijuana at that point.
Uh-huh.
But let me just say that I stopped, but if I'd been arrested, my life would have been destroyed.
Yeah.
I'd have been destroyed. Instead, I was able to go on, and I became a speechwriter and a special assistant to the President of the United States. I participated in other anti-communist operations in various countries of the world, and I ended up getting elected to Congress for 30 years. None of that would have happened had I been arrested for possession of marijuana.
Right.
Back then, nothing would have happened. It had destroyed all the good things I think I've done in my life.
And that's great, and that's how I feel also. I mean, when you look at the perspective of look at the lives that Prohibition has destroyed.
That's right.
And for what?
For what? Yes, that's right.
And then it takes our ire off the real problems of violent crime, or like you said, federally, we have actual real problems to deal with, and we're wasting our time on this ticky-tack little shit.
It's just wasting our resources, our time, and it also, it basically has created an attitude among young people that they shouldn't have they should respect the law, but how can you respect the law that they're seeing has no justification at all for it? Right.
That categorizes what? Heroin and cannabis in the same class.
Insane. Yeah.
It is insane. So I'm curious now. So what would you advise? What would be your advice to lawmakers in Europe? Right now, we have a system in Europe that is very much a federalist system, unfortunately, in my opinion, right now. I told people, I remember when I was in Slovenia in 2004 when they came into the European Union, and I have a Rasta friend here, Ziggy, who was excited about it, and I said to him, no, man, this is not Rasta, bro. It's opposite Rasta. And I said, you're going to be the United States of Europe. This is what's going to happen. And they tricked the Europeans, said that they're going to not have to change money or wait at the borders hours and hours during the summer. And that was, and they didn't talk about any uniform monetary policy, even though they implemented a uniform currency. So we knew that was a fucking recipe for disaster. But ultimately, what was created was a European superstate in the last 20 years. And of course, the seeds had been planted that probably since post-war, right? But now the European Union says, or the European Commission says, the Council on Europe, they say, no, you can't legalize cannabis, right? Because of the UN treaty, what was the 61 convention, right, was what they reference, in that you can only legalize cannabis for research or you can only liberalize the laws under the research or medical auspices. So what they've done is they've created, now the governments have had to become creative, and they're not allowed to do from our European overlords, a regulated adult use license and regulated system. That's not allowed in Europe per EU edict, right? And if somebody does do it, if a country does do it, they have the likelihood of getting sued. Now, Germany did something, and they could have done that. They didn't. They did an end around, basically through a de facto medical system. So now Germany has basically a de facto legalization system through medical, because the EU wouldn't let them do actual full adult use for fear that there'd be repercussions of being sued by the EU. So now, unfortunately, the countries in Europe don't have autonomy like they used to. They're beholden to the EU for various different reasons, being the threat of a lawsuit being one of them. Also, just lastly, before I get your response on this, which I'm really curious, there is no conservatism in America means you're not as much into the social state. That's not the case in Europe. Conservatives fully still believe in the social state in Europe, classic European social state governance. So they don't understand. So the human rights aspect isn't as big of a deal for them. They just look at the state being the ones that take care of everything. Anyway, I actually kind of lost my point there.
Well, let me correct it then.
Great.
Because if a good methodology on how to deal with this would be, as well as, which I believe in the constitutional theory, is leave it up to the states. Leave it up to the states, and then those states that want to legalize medical marijuana or legalize marijuana, period, let them do it. And there's no reason why that sales can't happen here in Europe as well, as far as I'm concerned. But of course, you know more about that.
Well, what do you say to people or then they're going to say, "Oh, well, we have to adhere to the 61 UN Convention"? Is there some pressure that could be put on the UN to change their antiquated, archaic, insipid drug policy?
Yeah, I've never been a fan of anything the United Nations does. I think they're incompetent, and they end up pushing things that half the time they're accomplishing things that I would oppose. So I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, that's interesting. I kind of expected that actually, because I think the fact that people reference them. When I first moved to Europe and everyone was like, "Oh, the UN Convention, the U.S. Convention," I was like, "What's that?" I was like, because in America, we don't even know. Oh, what, we helped make that convention? Well, we don't care about it because there's no repercussions they can do to us, right? And so the UN, I don't think, can be punitive, but now the EU can be punitive within their purview, right? And so that's the thing. But I would agree with you, and I think the country should just fucking do it.
Yeah.
And that's that, like Canada.
Well, it's like the United States, where you've got all these states. And when I say let the states decide, because that way you won't have others. People of a state can protect their own families and their own children the way they want to. They don't. And if they,
What a concept.
yeah, just if you end up. Why should someone from outside their community come in and tell them that they've got to have these laws to protect their families? No. If you want to protect your families, okay, let it happen then. And if the majority of people there want to keep marijuana illegal, well, that's that.
That's that.
That's that. But
That's that.
those people who don't want to see their teenage kid, have an arrest record and which holds him down for the rest of his life, and they said, no, we certainly don't want to enforce that way. Well, then they should say, leave that up to the states and the local communities. Get the federal government out of it.
Exactly.
And that was my approach because, well, it's a pro-freedom approach.
Well, exactly. And I actually think the European Union is on, as a behemoth as it is, it's on very precarious grounds. And I don't think that it is a sustainable model. Most people in Europe don't know what the European Union is. They don't know who their parliamentary representatives are. Mm-hmm. They can't explain to you, like everybody in America can say, what's the three branches of government? Everyone would say executive, legislative, judiciary, and if you say that in Europe, there's actually 7 branches of government. It's all kind of surreptitiously constructed, and it's very opaque, and it's not clear what's really going on. So they've created a system in Europe that is basically what I look like as a corporation. Right, where the people who have the power are not elected, and so there's no direct democracy in the system, and so they created a true corporatocracy that was attached to banks. So it is the European Central Bank for one, the International Monetary Fund for 2, and they call that the Troika, along with the European Commission, and then there's the 4th, de facto, which is the Deutsche Bundesbank, probably. And if you look at what happened in Greece years ago in terms of defaulting on debt or not defaulting, the case is, but then having to take on a lot more debt.
Everything you're saying. You have to remember, it's true also about the federal government in Washington making decisions for some local town in Nebraska.
Well, unfortunately, when I was telling people 20 years ago, Dana, that they're going to turn into the United States of Europe, I didn't know it was going to be this bad this quickly. I didn't know in 20 fucking years you're going to have an almost exact analogy to federalism in America within the Europe.
That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Well, of course, we'll let them decide.
Well, yeah, and that's the point.
Yeah.
They have to figure it out for themselves. But each country, I think, like you said, needs to push the envelope on this, and we need to fight this behemoth. And everyone says, oh, but the European Union gives us money. They don't give you money. They take your money, and they redistribute it and give it back to you the way they see fit. So there's no economic reason to have it, and there's also being small can be an advantage also.
Well, centralized government, well, first of all, powerful government doesn't work in and of itself anywhere. I don't see it.
Centralized powerful government.
Centralized power. The only thing it can do, the only thing our federal government can do is protect us from other federalized governments overseas who want to do us harm. So, but in the theory itself, the human rights theory and the human history of how we've set up our societies throughout the world over the 2,000 years we've been paying attention to it. It's never worked, and it just doesn't. And so I say that the future of humankind, well, I believe in freedom, and that's my major thing. What I'm really doing is I'm trying to set the groundwork for human progress. You see, I like people, and I like progress. I like the idea of people living at a higher standard of living, but you don't do that by strengthening the government, even if it's in the name of cleansing them of some habit that you don't like them, or what they're consuming as a drink or
You can't
a
legislate
drug.
morality, right?
Right. So the bottom line is that hopefully we can, with allowing people at the lowest level of government to make their decisions, whether it's state or local government,
Right.
make these decisions rather than having the federal government do it, will open the opportunities up for human progress that we don't know.
I think that's so well said. And look, it also coincides with globalism being anti-environment, right? So everything you produce, consume, manufacture in any way locally, right, is obviously better for the planet Earth. So isn't it funny how I always say the corporatocracy will never be the sponsors of the revolution. So isn't it funny how people say, well, globalism will save us all, but yet it's based on the most clunky, commoditized, sustenance model that one could ever imagine, which is anti-environment. So the same people are preaching environment, in my opinion, are doing the worst for the environment also. Why don't we produce?
I believe in technology and freedom. Those are the two things. Because I won't give you a whole technology treatment tonight, but I believe that technology and freedom, there's no limit to what we can accomplish as human beings. There's no limit to what we can accomplish if we have technology and freedom at play.
So, but I agree. And what I'm saying is, so the one thing I extrapolated from Marx, reading Marx, that I thought was that I agreed with, was more of a philosophical concept that he talked about. Whatever the mode of production is, the society will take on those attributes also. Right, so if the mode of production is freedom and communityism and localism, then the society will take on those attributes and be much more just happier, more secure.
That's right.
People that will then create productivity and innovation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's such a sad thing to see people turning each other in for the police. Can you imagine if you had a child, a teenage boy, and the neighbor ended up turning him into the police?
Yeah.
Or somebody who dislikes you, it doesn't have to be a neighbor, it could be someone who just dislikes you, turns your son in or your daughter in to the police for smoking marijuana?
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Whatever the police should be involved in people's lives should be something that it dramatically affects somebody else's life, not their own. You're not protecting people by the law from themselves. You're protecting them from something that was done aggressively
the only thing dangerous about
else.
Cannabis is that it's illegal, right?
That's it.
That's well said. And of course, cannabis is the metaphor for freedom, and it really hits on a lot of different levels, whether it's food, fuel, fiber, shelter, medicine, liberty. It hits on all these levels that is a metaphor for how to live our lives in other ways, and how to set up governance.
I haven't changed my position on marijuana forever. I mean, I became a libertarian when I was, I was in college anyway. And so if I can survive all of these things, I was 30 years in the United States Congress. I was 7 years in the White House. I was on President Reagan's staff. I was, and you can make as many enemies as that staff job as you do in the Congress. Yeah. And so I was very aggressive in fighting for the things I believed in, but you can imagine that you can get a lot accomplished without having to. The marijuana hasn't affected me. And me being able to accomplish whatever I wanted to accomplish politically.
And then, of course, you must have had so much blowback from your Republican constituency on this issue and a lot of other progressive issues.
I got some, but so what? I mean, I always was very frank with people about what I believe, and And I got elected for 30 years in Congress from a conservative Republican district.
Right.
And of course, my relationship with Ronald Reagan, I'll never forget Reagan. I told him, I said, he said, well, Dana, we understand you're a conservative, but no, now they tell me you're a libertarian. And I told him, I said, well,
Shit, that's a spot on Reagan.
Mr. President-elect, it was Mr. President, I am a libertarian now, but I'm a patriot. And he said something about, well, libertarianism actually is the heart and soul of the Republican Party.
Oh, shit.
Don't let
Reagan
anybody. He told me that.
Reagan said that
yeah,
to
he
you.
said that to me. So
Fascinating.
yeah, it was. Well, that's why, and when he got into getting his things done, he got a lot of good things done while he was president too.
No question. I mean, not to mention his foreign policy is probably the thing he's most famous for during his tenure, at least his second 4 years, with putting the pressure on Russia. I mean, that was a hard time. Dan, I got a question for you. I think this is the $64,000 question. What do you think Trump will do in terms of cannabis policy for America?
I'm not quite sure, but I think Trump will he will fight the centralization of power and the deep state. Is the quintessential example of that in our country. The unrelated use of power and uncontrolled, unregulated use of power by federal people who are in cahoots with the private sector people making money.
The definition of fascism, capture between corporation and government.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that Trump will be a revolutionary, and because he'll see what he's popular in when he makes these stands. For example, he just took. I understand that it was who's the ambassador. He just took 2 people off the ambassador list. I wrote it down when I heard it. Mike Pompeo. He took Mike Pompeo off the list.
Oh, he's going to. Oh, good.
Well, good. That's right. It's good that he took him off. And Pompeo, I'm not going to hurt him too badly here, but the bottom line is Pompeo is not someone who is dedicated to the type of liberty and freedom that I am.
For sure not.
And so, and the fact that you have Trump taking him off the list, that people thought that Pompeo would be really high up on the list of being.
Shows you where he's at, and especially in his second term, right?
Right. So I'm optimistic that Trump will make will mainly make the right direction decisions.
So I think he's going to do something like get the SAFE Act going, and he's just going to let the banking go down and write-offs. He won't federally legalize it per se, but he might have it help reschedule it. Not that that's under his purview per se, jurisdiction, but he can obviously push the needle on that, and then maybe stop, and then maybe let banking happen.
I don't know, because you see, everything depends. He's going to be juggling so many things,
Sure.
And they have one thing will pull from another thing or will reinforce something else. And I don't know what those decisions will be. I don't know what those forces will be right now.
But you think something will happen?
Oh, I think he's going to. I think he's going to make things happen, and but he's a gutsy guy, and I voted for him each time. But I kind of, frankly, I don't want to say anything bad about it. I wish he wouldn't have been so personal in his remarks about people who disagree with him.
For sure.
And that's I think
probably his least redeeming.
Yeah, that's hurt him so much.
If he could just keep his mouth.
And with Reagan, you couldn't get him. I remember I tried to get him once to do it. To
be somewhat incendiary?
Well, he was going to give a speech before a group, and one of the guys who was leading the group was a guy who really
You were like,
in
give a little
public.
back.
So I gave him I was working on the president's remarks for the group, and I wrote his speeches I wrote more speeches for Ronald Reagan than anybody else you'll ever meet.
Wow.
And Reagan, well, Dana, what's this all about? And I said, well, this guy is beat the hell out of you. He kicked you in the ass every time he has a chance. And he said, well, Dana, this is not the way to approach a man like that, especially in front of his own group. What you want to do is you want to kill him with kindness.
And that was Reagan's.
That was Ronald Reagan.
Until you wrote that.
Trump could not ever get himself to do that.
That's for sure. So you actually wrote, or you smuggled Reagan when the one time he was incendiary was the most famous speech, probably the second most famous speech in the 20th century by a president, second to Kennedy.
I think it made all the difference. You're talking about the Berlin Wall speech.
Yeah, just really quickly, tell us what that situation.
Well, first of all, Peter Robinson wrote it, and he's a guy with Hoover Institute. There are 5 speechwriters who worked for the president, and I was one of them. I was Tony Dolan and I were sort of the senior guys, but Reagan. How can I say this? Peter Robinson went on the tour with the senior with the staff to everywhere Reagan would go in his European trip. That was upcoming in about a month. So he went there and he got that always happened because you have to have somebody who understands what each audience is expecting and work with the policymakers there to understand what policies are important to the public and to the country. So Peter Robinson had gotten that job and had been around to those various places. When he got in, he told us the CIA and the State Department they're going to try to prevent Ronald Reagan from saying anything about the Berlin Wall. Because when we got to Berlin, they kept telling me, he can't say anything. He's going to be looked at as a warmonger if he even mentions the Berlin Wall.
Too, right? Was it at the wall, the speech, or no?
No, this is what this is preparing for. Peter Robinson went to Berlin to prepare for it. And then all the CIA and the State Department people, we can't even acknowledge the Berlin Wall. So Peter Robinson comes back and we have a meeting with Tony Dolan was the head of the speechwriting department. He put us 5 of us together, and we got to do this. This is going to be the toughest assignment we've ever had because Peter Robinson tells the State Department, the CIA is against Reagan mentioning the Berlin Wall. Yeah. And we all know he can't. If he does that, that'll be the worst possible message that we can send. We all agreed on that. So anyway, we divided up what jobs were needed to make sure the president was able to say that. By the way, Peter had gone after the State Department people in Berlin had told him, the German people, they're going to think Reagan's a warmonger for saying anything about. He went there and they had to different meetings with Germans, and they were crying. Our families have been shot crawling over that wall. You can't. Your president has to condemn it. And it was just the opposite of what our State Department was telling. Well, anyway, my job was to make sure that what Peter Robinson, because he had already done the research on the trip,
just to even get the speech to Reagan.
And my job was to make sure Reagan got it in his hands, because all of us agreed that if he got it in his hands, no one would be able to prevent him from saying it, because that's what he would want to do. So Peter wrote it, and then I found out what happened. There are a series of tunnels underneath the White House. People don't know about them, but there's a series of tunnels, and the old executive office building is where most of the president's staff, which is right across a little alleyway, have our offices. And so what I did is I had to calculate when Reagan was going to go to Camp David. And when you go to Camp David, you go through a tunnel to get up on the South Lawn, where he catches a helicopter to go. So I had to find out how to rendezvous with him, how to cut him off in the tunnels. And so I knew when he was gonna go, and I loaded up all the speeches that Reagan was going to give on the European trip, and I made sure I put the Berlin Wall speech in there, myself. I got it right in there. And then we get up there, but there's a member of the senior staff sitting there, right there, waiting for us to try to make our play. And he's, well, what do you want? What do you want? And look, we've decided we worked advance. We have 2 weeks of speeches for Reagan in advance now. He'll have a week and a half in advance to work on these things and decide what he really wants to say. And that's why we're here, to give it to him. And the guy takes it and he says, wait a minute. Some of these speeches haven't been secured. They haven't been approved by senior staff yet. You can't give a foreign policy speech that the Secretary of State hasn't seen. You can't give that to the President of the United States. Who are you? You're speech writers. You're not policymakers. And I said, oh, well, we think we are. We're the musketeers, for the king. And so the guy is, I'm going, uh-oh. I said, look, we got him. We were giving him an extra week by all the work we did to work on these speeches. And who do you work for? Do you work for the senior staff, or do you work for? And because I could see over this guy's shoulder, I could see Reagan coming down the tunnel.
Yeah, he was stalling almost
this guy
until he gets there.
And so as soon as he got there, I said, "Who do you work for? Do you work for the senior staff, or do you work for?" Hi, fellas. How's everything going along? And it's Reagan's staff. And the guy says, who do you work for, buddy? And he goes, Mr. President, the speechwriters have outdone themselves this time. They've got the entire trip to Europe down for you and given you an extra week to work on it. And sure enough, I put it in his hand. I put it in his hands, and with the speech, and that was right there.
Oh my God.
And I said, well, the Cold War is going to be over. Because I knew Ronald Reagan, and I knew what it would happen, and it's exactly.
And you knew how poignant it would, how much it would resonate if he said it.
It did resonate. People,
Mr. Gorbachev,
tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev. People still have no idea. I'll give you a very short summary of this now, but people have no idea how that changed the world, because what happened was that shook the Soviets so much, Gorbachev, right? That shook him so much that they gave in a very serious negotiations that was taking place that I was aware of, and the senior staff was aware of. Nobody else has been aware of. And that's when Ronald Reagan got the agree after he gave that speech, and it so shook them up. They ended up agreeing that they would withdraw all of their troops from Eastern Europe if we agreed not to remand their positions with people from NATO. And that would have ended the Cold War right there. And
interesting, right?
Oh, it was terrible. It was a wonderful thing. We knew that the stakes were that high. I almost cried when when Reagan got a hold of it, because I knew that he wouldn't back down, and I knew what an impact him saying it, because I knew about. There's a guy named Bill Middendorf, who I don't know if you know Admiral Middendorf. He was a guy Reagan sent out and did personal negotiations with very significant people in various countries. Mm-hmm. And he had been negotiating with the Russians. And so we ended up with the thing, and Reagan, it so shook them up, they agreed to pull out their troops. And what eventually happened, however, was that we broke our word.
Yeah, it's too bad we didn't have a real Marshall Plan to give them.
No, we didn't
needed
have
an enemy still.
It didn't need it. All we needed to do was not to have anybody going in to Ukraine telling them we're going to put NATO troops in after we had promised.
Or even all the other stuff we did, ending the START treaty and surrounding them in other countries with nuclear missiles, and with the pressure, the CIA going into Georgia and stuff, all that shit.
That we could have, Reagan had.
We could be allies. We could be allies.
Reagan set the course, and then Hillary Clinton was the one who sent. By the way, in Ukraine, people don't realize we withdrew our troops from Ukraine. And then the reason why there's so much bloodshed today is that the Russians are trying to reoccupy Ukraine because we broke our word to them.
Yeah, and
We broke our word to them, and there's no reason in the world right now that we couldn't have been in a very positive relationship with Russia, just the same way we are with Germany or France or any other country.
I agree 100%, and it's insane what with the warmongering and the power brokering and all the money that goes into the and to look at BlackRock and State Street and what they're doing to control certain areas of.
I'll tell you something. A long time ago,
Vanguard.
As you know, I was involved with various anti-communist projects, and I went to Afghanistan and fought with the Mujahideen against the Soviet troops, especially at the Battle of Jalalabad, which was a turning battle, point battle. And anyway, I gave the order that Mordavad Shurdavi, Zindabad Afghanistan, death to the Soviets, long live Afghanistan, and that's when our rockets landed right on the Russian lines.
You called in the coordinates?
I called in the whole thing, and it killed a bunch of them. And
Well, isn't this the point, though, that whether it's communism,
that's right,
or authoritarianism, or globalism, it's not freedomism, it's not individualism, it's not humanism, it's not communityism, it's not localism. And I think people should be wary of it, even though sometimes it comes nicely wrapped in a pretty package.
First, I realized this, that these people we killed were Russian soldiers. They probably didn't like the system either.
Exactly.
And they were our greatest allies in this whole thing, were the Russian people, and they are not communists. They have there's a Russian Orthodox religion under Putin, even, who's a gangster, but he's not a communist.
He's not a communist, right?
He's a gangster,
right?
But they've built hundreds of churches. A communist dictator doesn't do that, and we.
Oh no, for sure. People still conflate Russia and the Soviet Union like they're the same fucking thing.
Well, if we'd have kept our word,
we wouldn't be in this mess. And the thing is they didn't ask for much.
That's right.
They were actually treated like the redheaded stepchild. And if only 10% of that stuff happened to us or close to our borders, we would have killed millions for that. So it's great to have you here, Dana. It's great to have a voice of reason here to keep things in perspective in this crazy world. It's great to have one of the top living cannabis champions in the world here in Slovenia. I want to thank you, brother. It's been an amazing conversation, and I'm ready to go eat some wonderful Slovenian food and drink some Slovenian wine with you right now, brother. You ready?
Ready.
Okay, thank you so much, Dana. God bless, brother. Thanks so much. All right, that's it. Where the World Meets Cannabis. We'll see you at the next episode. This was a banger right here. Much love, ICBC family. Thanks, Dana. Peace and freedom.